So years ago, before starting the church, one of the jobs that I had was I was in the car business, and in this particular company, we had to go to a customer service training school. I had to put it in my notes to make sure I got it right before that we could kind of officially start working. And we got trained on a bunch of things. One of the things that they drilled into us was that our job was not to sell cars. Our job was to serve people. So our job was to kind of make a friend and find out what were their needs, and then try our best to meet those needs. And the rest of the sales process would just kind of take care of itself, or so they said. Until it came, now that worked out great until it came to the time to negotiate the numbers. How many of you ever bought a car before? Okay, from a dealership. Okay, right? And so one of the things, one of the most often, I guess, said phrases from a customer during the negotiation, at least in my experience, was 3 words. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about those terms and conditions. I don't know about that price. I don't know about that value on my trade. You know what? Now that I'm having second thoughts, I don't know about that color of car. Like, I really wanted that one, and you're trying to make me get into this one. I don't know. And so we were trained to simply ask, okay, well, what do you need to know today in order to make a decision? And do you know what they said? Almost 100% of the time. You know what it is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I need to know in order to make a decision. Now, let me ask you, when it comes to making decisions, how many of you can relate, right? You get stuck, you kind of go back and forth, you stall, you're indecisive, you even avoid or ignore or procrastinate decisions because you don't know. Anybody? Well, today, we are kicking off this brand new series entitled Waffles. And it's all about you and I learning to make decisions. And when we say the term waffles, what we're referring to is, this is from vocabulary.com, to waffle is to be unable or unwilling to make a clear decision about what to do. Now, I don't want to see anybody elbowing each other, okay, on this one. But then it goes a step further. It says to avoid making a definitive decision. So for you, when do you waffle? When do you waffle? Maybe, if it's like me, maybe it's around the idea of finances, right? Like when you have to go and buy something, like there is just, there's like just a limit. There is a number in mind. When it is that number or higher, and it's a really tough decision. And you waffle. So maybe for you, it's finances. Maybe for you, it's relationships. Maybe when you just kind of get around certain people, maybe it's your spouse, or maybe it's your boss, or your direct report, or your director. It's just kind of really hard to make that decision. You're sitting there in the conference room, and you just really can't punch it and make the decision. So maybe for you, it's relationships. Maybe for some of you, it's commitments. That whenever a commitment is required, you waffle. For some of you, it may be, I just wrote down this idea of maybe it's a career. Picking a job. Your roommate or your buddy would say to you, hey man, just pick a career already. Like you change jobs more than you change socks. Like, come on, right? Or maybe it's a major. Maybe if you're on your 5th major in your 2nd semester, like maybe we need to talk after this, right? You just have a hard time deciding. Or maybe it's like in marriage. You're dating somebody and you're like, come on already. Like do something. Like make a decision or cut bait, but do something. Or maybe it's volunteering, or maybe it's picking a church. Maybe if this is your first time here in Relentless Church, welcome. We're really glad that you're here. But if you're here and you look back over your life, and in the last 5 years, you've been a part of 5 or 6 different churches, you just kind of really have a hard time committing and kind of planting roots. Maybe you waffle. Others are a little more serious. Maybe for you, it's your past failures. For some of us, when there is hurt or pain or sorrow in our past, it makes us waffle on future decisions. Or for some of you, it's future fear. Future fear. Like, what am I going to be when I grow up, right? What am I going to be? What am I going to do when I graduate? I can remember being in high school, and after graduation, friends and family would come up to me and they would ask, like, hey, like, what's next? Like, what is next? Tell us. Go ahead, tell us. What is next? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, dinner? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's like all this pressure, like, no. Like, now, you've got to decide now what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I'm just like, I just want chicken fried steak, right? For some of you, when you think about your future, you know that change is coming. Like, it's unstoppable. You know that change is coming, right? Like, you're about to get married, or you're maybe you're about to have a baby, or maybe you're about to kind of move out and finally live on your own. And that guaranteed change kind of causes you to stall, to get stuck, to push pause on making decisions. Or another one for me is just simply when I don't care. Anybody else? Like when I just don't care about the outcome. Like, where are we going to go eat? Like, I don't care. Like, where do you want to go to dinner? I don't care. Like, where do you want to go to dinner? I don't know. I don't care. And it's just back and forth over and over. Anybody? Like, have that? Like, and you just take so much time just trying to decide where to go that you could have already had it by then. Right? So when do you waffle? When do you waffle? Because see, here's the reality. Our life is basically a summation of the decisions that we make. Some of our decisions are simple and really easy to make. Other decisions are much more complex. Harder to laugh about those decisions. They're difficult. We're faced with them, and we know that it's a life-altering decision. This is kind of one of those moments, right? And in a room this size, there are some of you that are there today. Like you're there, right there today. And here's the reality. Today, you're going to make some more decisions. And tomorrow, you're going to make some more decisions. And for the rest of your life and my life, you're going to make decisions. So how do we make better decisions? And how do we live with less regrets? How do we stop making bad decisions? Right? Because here's the reality. Every one of us has made some bad decisions. Every one of us has made some good decisions, but every one of us has made some bad decisions. There are many of us who could stand on this stage and we could just kind of talk through a mic and talk about how proud we are of some of the decisions we have made, but then some of us could stand on the stage and just talk about how ashamed we are of some of the decisions that we've made. And if you were to mark this date, what is today? August 14th. And say, moving forward, I'd like to minimize, ideally eliminate these bad decisions. And could I start learning how to make good decisions? You see, decision making is a skill that we can learn how to do. And decision making, as you look all throughout the Bible, is something that is addressed in great detail. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to, with God's help, we're going to learn to become better decision makers. Next week, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about how to make better decisions. And let me just tell you, if you've struggled with the decision of God's will, is God's will this or is God's will that, you're going to want to be here for next week. Then in week 3, we're going to look at how to get input and feedback and who you should be inviting into your decisions. Maybe you've heard the old adage before that if you make a decision alone, don't be surprised if you feel alone after the decision. Right? So we're going to be talking about who you should be inviting into your decisions. Today, I want us to focus on the why. Why do we struggle with making decisions? And where do we begin? Where do we begin? Because, and you know this, our decisions are incredibly and indescribably important. In fact, I would say it like this. I wrote it in my notes like this, that the quality of your decisions determines the quality of your life. Your decisions, like you make your decisions, but your decisions end up making you. The problem is that most of us are not good decision makers, right? We want to eat right, but then we decide to eat more than we should. Anybody? We want to be wise with our money, but we decide to buy things that we can't afford, or if you're like me, you go to Starbucks every day. We want to be wise with our words, but we decide to say things that we regret. We want to do the right thing, but we end up doing the wrong thing. We want to love the people around us, but unfortunately, sometimes our decisions end up hurting the people around us. We want to be good decision makers, but the problem is that most of us aren't. So why? Why do we struggle? Why do we want to do the right thing, but sometimes we can't? Why do we want to make the right decision, but sometimes we can't? Why do we struggle to make good decisions? Well, I see at least 3 reasons. One is we are overwhelmed with options, aren't we? We are overwhelmed with options. In fact, some studies show that the average adult, watch this, will make upwards of, are you ready for this? Around 35,000 decisions a day. From the moment you wake up, what do I eat? What do I wear? Some of you had these decisions today, right? When do I look? Do I go online? Do I pull out my phone? Do I get on social media? Do I scroll? Do I tap? Do I like? Do I like with a heart emoji? Do I like with the wow emoji? Like, do I comment? Like what do I do? Like, what do I wear to work? What do I say to the people at work? All day long, we are faced with decisions. And what happens is because we have so many choices, our decision-making muscle, we'll call it that, literally becomes fatigued. In fact, cognitive scientists have termed the phrase decision fatigue. Ever heard of that? Decision fatigue. Essentially what happens is the volume of decisions increases and the quality of decisions decreases because we're making decisions day after day, moment after moment, all day long. Our decision-making muscle gets really, really tired. And that's why you make difficult and wise decisions all day at work. And then you get home and you blow it and you just binge eat all the Ben and Jerry's, right? Or I would say this, so we make these wise financial choices. You're saving, you're investing all day long, you're budgeting. Some of you have a spreadsheet that's like color-coded, right? Like you're there. And you've got it, you keep your receipts. Like I don't keep my receipts, maybe I should, but you probably do. You got a bag full of them or a file. What, you make all the right decisions financially, but then out of nowhere, you make an absurd purchase. And somebody be like, why'd you do that? And you're like, I don't know. I don't know, right? So we try to make good decisions, but because of the volume of them, the quality starts to decrease. The second big problem is, for many of us, is that we are afraid of making the wrong choice. We're afraid of making wrong choices. This is especially true for us that are Christians because we don't want to miss God's will. And so a lot of times we analyze something and we'll say like, well, I'm not sure that that's the perfect job for me. I'm not sure that's the perfect opportunity for me. I'm not sure that's the perfect school for me. I'm not sure that's the perfect person to date for me. And since we aren't sure, sometimes we don't even make any decisions at all. And the real challenge is because we have to understand that indecision is actually a decision. And indecision is actually the enemy to progress. So why do we struggle to make good decisions? Well, we're overwhelmed with all the options. We're afraid, we're afraid of making the wrong choice. And then the one that I really kind of want us to drill down on is this one. We let our feelings overrule the facts. We let our feelings overrule the facts. We let our emotions make decisions. And this is where so many of us struggle in kind of our decision-making process. It breaks down. We let our emotions overrule logic, which is really, really interesting because on some decisions, we spend way too much time analyzing. Right? You probably do this. You might spend more time analyzing the series that you want to watch versus actually watching the show. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Like, just spend, what do I watch? I don't know. This one. Like, you hit the trailer. Anybody do this? It's just me. Like, you hit the trailer. I watch so many trailers, right? And I'm like, no, yes, save, no, yes, save. And I never watched anything. Like, I never actually get started. So you probably do this. And we know that, we kind of know how this plays out, don't we? When you make decisions based on your emotions. Your sibling upsets you, or your kids upset you. And logic says, be patient. And your emotion says, go ahead. Just yell as loud as you can. Parents, you know what I'm talking about? And our emotion tends to take over. Or have you ever had an unexpected temptation and your logic says, danger, don't do it, right? But your emotion says, let's do it, right? I like that. I like the look of that. Let's get in there. Let's do that, whatever that is. And so often, it's the emotional decisions that we make that end up hurting ourselves and others. And that's why I would tell you this. If you want to write this down, you can. Whatever you do, don't make permanent decisions based on temporary decisions or temporary emotions. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Don't make decisions that are going to impact you for years to come based on the emotion that you feel in the moment. So why do our decisions matter so much? Because the quality of our decisions determines the quality of our life. You make your decisions. You make your choices. But your choices end up making you. I know it's kind of a long intro, but now here's my question. When it comes to making decisions, where do we even begin? Where do we begin? And this brings us to Proverbs chapter 4. And if you're new to your Bible, let me just encourage you to kind of put like a forever bookmark in the book of Proverbs. I mean, it is incredible. It's what's called the wisdom literature. And I would just encourage you, if you need a Bible reading plan, like where do I start or how do I continue to stay just in the Word? Man, let me just encourage you, just start with one proverb a day. I mean, there's generally 31 days in a month. Like you could read the entire book of Proverbs in a month, every month, and just put that song on repeat. It is that good. It is that good. And today, what we're going to see in chapter 4 is that your decisions begin by what you let in. I'll say that again. All of your decisions begin by what you let in. In Proverbs chapter 4, what we have is a dad. Who, by the way, historically, biblically, is the wisest man to ever live, named Solomon. And he is speaking to his son. And in verses 20 through 22, he says to his son, son, pay attention. Pay close attention. He says, be attentive to my words. Pay attention to what I'm saying. Why? Because it says in verse 22 that the quality of your life depends on it. He says in verse 22, there is life and healing in my words. Now, I think that we get the word life, okay? There's life there. But when he says healing, it really means it's kind of hard to describe in one English word, but it means peace of mind or peace of heart. So think the opposite of anxiety. Anybody ever have anxiety? Okay, think the opposite of that, right? And so he says, son, pay attention. And then he tells him 4 things to do. 4 things to do to have life and peace of mind when making decisions. And the first thing that he tells the son is this. Number 1, he says, son, guard your heart. Dear son, guard your heart. In verse 23, he says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. The first Bible that I ever got was an NIV Bible, New International Version. And I love the way that it says it in the New International Version. It says this. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So right out of the gate, let me just say this. Men, this is not just a verse for the ladies about dating, okay? This is a verse that is about war. The word guard here is how you would guard a castle back in its time. Somebody armed would stand out front, just ready to kill with force any enemy that was willing to come in. And so the father says to his son, this is how you guard your heart. You protect it like with an armed soldier. You guard what comes in, and you guard what comes out. Not only does he say, guard your heart, but he says, above all else, right? Think about that. Above all else, guard your heart. In other words, more than you guard anything else, he says, guard your heart more than you guard your house with an alarm, more than you put a security code on your computer or your phone, more than you lock away your money in a bank. He says, guard your heart more than you guard anything that you possess. Spend more time, effort, and energy into guarding your heart. You see, the heart is the most vital, protected organ of the body, but we're not talking about this thing in here that pumps blood. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the inner core of a person. You see, back then, the heart was the center. It was the sum total center of a person, of who you really are. In other words, the heart is the main driver of your life. The heart is the thing that drives all of your decisions. It drives your emotions, your thoughts, your desires, your feelings. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the heart. And it's fragile and valuable and powerful. And we protect things that are fragile, valuable, and powerful. Why? Think about it for a minute. Have you ever gotten some bad news and it turned your world upside down? Ever been there? Maybe it was a breakup. Maybe it was the loss of a loved one. Maybe it was the loss of a job. And when it happened, you didn't want to eat anything. You didn't want to get out of bed. Why? Because something had crept into your heart and turned it. And what the Father is trying to say is, son, guard your heart. Because your feelings are real. They're real. And they are powerful. They are powerful. They are real and they are powerful. For example, have any of you seen Pixar's Inside Out? Anybody seen Pixar's Inside Out? I love Pixar, man, for two reasons. One, because I'm a dad and I have kids. But also because they're just like so good at what they do. And in this movie, you've got this little girl, and her name is what? Riley, right? And she has these 5 emotions kind of personified inside of her. It's joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger. And then what happens is kind of the plot moves forward, is that sadness and joy get lost, leaving only fear, disgust, and anger, kind of personifying like adolescence, if you will. And so you see this girl and her life, and you see where her feelings carry her. I mean, is there anything greater than feeling pure joy? And is there anything worse than feeling pure sorrow? Bryson, why are you telling me this? I'm telling you this because I'm trying to make the point that the text wants you to understand that it's how you feel is powerful. In fact, it's so powerful that it takes you somewhere. Like it takes you places. So the Father says to the Son, guard your heart because everything in your life flows from it. So why do we need to guard our heart? We guard our heart because what we let in is ultimately what we will live out. What we let in will inform and shape what comes out. And that's not just some fancy line to write down and remember. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12, he says the good man brings good things that are the good man brings good things that are stored up in him, and the evil man brings out evil that is stored up in him. You see, your feelings are powerful. We have to guard our heart because what we let in is ultimately what we will live out. So how do we do this? Well, this is where he goes next. And what he says is son, don't follow your heart. Don't follow your heart. Lead your heart. Don't follow your heart. Lead your heart. And the way you lead your heart is by feeding your heart. And what I need you to understand today is that your heart wants what it is fed. It makes me think of that thing on Netflix, right? You know that thing on Netflix that says because you watch this, you might be interested in this and this and this and this. You know what I'm talking about? Right? Your heart works that way. What you feed it with, what you lead it to do, it will want more and more and more and more of. And so what the Father does here in verses 24 and 26 through 26, he gives his Son 3 things to watch out for, to guard against, to pay attention to. And the first thing he tells his Son is he says, son, in order to lead your heart and feed your heart, you have to watch your words. You have to watch your words. He says in verse 24, he says, put away from you crooked speech and put away devious talk far from you. This is how you lead your heart. One of the ways you lead your heart is to watch your words, to watch what you say, to watch the words that are coming your way, to be careful with what you say. Don't entertain crooked speech or devious talk. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only that which is good for building up others. So get the picture. The Father is sitting his Son down and saying, son, Don't give in. Don't give any attention to gossiping, to lying, to slandering, to hearsay. Be careful what you say and be careful around what other people say because it affects your heart. Even sarcasm. Sarcasm can poison your heart. And here's the deal. I know what I sound like right now. Like I sound like your grandma. Or your old Sunday school teacher, right? But here's the thing. Is Solomon the wisest man to ever live wrong? Is the creator of the universe wrong? So the father says, son, watch your words, number one. The second thing that he says is not only to watch your words, but he says to watch your eyes. To watch your eyes. Look at verse 25. He says, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Now this is a big one. Be careful what you look at. Because what you look at is feeding your heart. So movies, news, music, media, all of it is feeding your heart every day. Now, I need to say this. I'm not a movie or media hater, okay? I'm not. I have a TV, okay? I've got devices. I'm preaching off of a device right now. I've got apps, I've got accounts, I'm not, but here, far too often, we are entertained and amused by the things that Christ died for. And it's feeding our heart. It's feeding our heart with misinformation. It's feeding our heart with false narratives. It's feeding our heart with false expectations and discontentment, isn't it? I don't know about you, but if I want to fast track to discontentment, all I got to do is open up Instagram. That's it. Anybody else? Comparing vacations. They're on one. I've never had one. They're there. Oh, gosh, they're there. They're eating that. Oh, and we know that Instagram's not real, but still, it feeds our heart. It feeds our heart discontentment. And so the father looks at the son, and he says, son, watch your words and watch your eyes. Watch what you are looking at because it's feeding your heart. And then number 3, he says, son, watch your steps. Watch your steps. In verse 26, he says, ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil. In other words, he says, watch where you go and who you go with. Watch where you go and who you go with. The bottom line is you cannot hang out in the wrong places with the wrong people and live the right life. That is a fact. Some of you look at your life and your decisions and you wonder, how in the world did I get here? How in the world did I get here? And the way that you got there is by the places that you went and the people that you hung out with. That's how you got there. So some of you need to make some new friends. And just look around. There are people in this room that want to know you, get to know you, love you, hang out with you, accept you, invite you into their home, invite you into their activities, invite you into their life. There are men and women all across this room. Maybe your next step after the service is simply to put out your hand and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and you are? That is one of the most powerful things you can do. I'm telling you. It really, really is. So some of you need to make some new friends. Look, and I've been there, man. I was in college. I was in a fraternity. I was an athlete. I did some really dumb things and made some really bad decisions, all because of who I chose to be my friends. And what I found is that every one of us will easily become a product or even a byproduct of our surroundings. Every one of us. So 3 things. He says, watch your words, watch your eyes, and watch your steps. So here's the deal. Let me just kind of show you what happens to our hearts over time. I want you to imagine that this is your heart. It's obviously not your heart, but I want you to imagine that this is your heart. And here's kind of what happens. When you stop watching your words, so a little bit drop. Stop gossiping. Lie a little bit. Slander a little bit. Or maybe it's not even your own words. Maybe you grew up with a really good moral upbringing and you don't have a potty mouth. Maybe it's the words that you're receiving. Maybe it's the words that you're listening to from other people. Just a little bit. Or maybe you stop guarding your eyes a little bit. Just to look here. Just to look there. Right. Or maybe you stop guarding where you're going and who you're going with. Starts to get a little bit cloudier, a little bit cloudier, a little bit cloudier. Now, let me ask you something. Do you want to follow this? Do you really want to make decisions with this? This is your judgment. This is your decision-making filter. Do you want to trust this? No, of course not. Of course not. Like, don't you want to make clear decisions from a clear conscience, from a clear heart? Yes, we all do. So what do? We guard our heart. Above all else, we guard our heart. We watch our words. We watch our eyes. We watch our steps. We watch where we go. Why? Because our decisions begin by what we let in. Now, there are some things that we do need to let in. And we'll actually cover those over the next couple of weeks. But today, as we end, I just want to leave you with one question. What are you letting in that you should leave out? What are you letting in right now that you know that you should leave out? Here's the truth. I have no idea what that could be for you. Maybe I could kind of give you some categories, some things to think through, but at the end of the day, I think you know. So I don't know what it may be for you, but I do know this, that just like this dad in Proverbs chapter 4, talking to his son, wants him to have a life in peace, the God of the universe wants the same thing for you. So let's take some time today to do business with God and reflect on this question. For some of you, you need to really think about this. Right now, you're in a situation of life where you're like, my decisions aren't very good. And let me just encourage you to start by looking at what you're letting in. For some of you today, you would look at this and you'd say, like, I think my heart is always like this. And you may be right. And you need something to come in and you need something to clean it up, to clear your conscience, to clear your heart. Now, the Bible tells us in Jeremiah that the heart is desperately wicked, and we have a black heart. We've got a heart like this. But the good news is this, is that because God was madly in love with you, he sent his son, Jesus, to the cross to pay for your sin. And with his blood, to power wash your heart clean. And so today, maybe your decision is maybe you need to think about what you're letting in, but maybe today you really just need to think about letting in Jesus and accepting Jesus and receiving Jesus. So I don't know. I don't know where you're at today. I'm really glad that you're here. But during this time, I want us to take a serious time of reflection. Because at the end of the day, remember, it's all about the quality of your life. The quality of your decisions will end up being the quality of your life. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for today. Father, I know right now that there are friends in the room that are going to be wrestling with this question. And I pray that you would give them just an extra measure of insight and wisdom and grace. God, I pray that they wouldn't feel beat up or guilty or shamed by the things that they've let in. But God, that they would feel freed up, that you are so kind and generous to point them out and to love them enough in that way. So, Father, would you give my friends just wisdom and an extra measure of your Spirit today? For my friends in the room that don't know you, God, would you give them faith to believe today, in an instance, that their sins can be forgiven, that black heart can be made new, the heart of stone can be made flesh in the name of Jesus. Would you give my friends faith to believe? And would you give all of us a heart to worship? In Jesus' name, amen.